A new way to play Bilgewater has been innovated in China, playing around Ryze carry, all the news and discussions about the new patch coming up and how the patch will drastically affect the meta, results of the first competitive TFT event, the NA Subregional, and an impossible TFT Easter egg you might have missed. All of that and much more will be covered today as we go over what is currently going on in the TFT space. And first, let's talk about the NA Subregional. Over the course of the weekend, we saw the conclusion of the first North American competitive event in North American Subregionals, or Phoenix's Redemption, where the top 4 qualifying players after the whole event get to qualify immediately into the first cup of the set, while 5th through 8 get to automatically qualify for the trials. Now those players are 1st place David Ace, 2nd place Pun, 3rd place Slice Down, and 4th place Dranox, who all again qualify for the first cup, and 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th place Sigil, Inc, Zeka Wannabe, and the Mr. Peanuts all qualify for trials immediately. Now if you're wondering where my name was, because I did mention I was supposed to play in this, I actually did qualify for the 3rd day, but I missed the check-in by 2 minutes because I was busy VOD reviewing, so they unfortunately didn't let me play. So I really wanted to compete in this, but unfortunately I could not, but that is okay. It happens to the best of us. Now the first cup of the event, the Shrima Cup, the Tacticians Cup 1, will be taking place on January 9th. That is coming up in 2 days by the time this video comes out. With all due respect, while the Subregional is a competitive event, compared to the level of quality of play that we're going to see at the cup itself, it is nowhere near the same. The cup is where you're going to see a lot of these tier 1 pro players are going to be competing. All of your favorite pro players, players like Soju, players like Dishso, players like Kiyun, etc., are all going to be competing inside of the Shrima Cup, and they did not have to compete in the Subregional because it actually does not apply to them since they automatically qualify for the cup itself. Players were having a lot of difficulty actually staying connected into the game, and were sometimes getting DDoS, or were actually becoming disconnected from the game, or loading into game with large lag spikes, and ranked itself actually ended up going down. And this wasn't just a TFT issue, this was an issue across the whole league client. But Riot Games quickly got onto it and they renewed it for the next 100 years. So it's very likely we will never see this problem happen ever again. The next thing I want to cover is one of the most incredible TFT Easter eggs we have ever seen, which, in case you're ever wondering, what happens when you unlock all 40 champions in TFT in the same game? Well, it turns out Mindful was actually able to pull this off inside of Talker's Trials, which is an incredible feat, even inside of Talker's Trials, just to keep in mind. In case you're wondering how this can actually be done, you need to do a lot of impossible things. Like, for example, you must hit the Shinzao Hero Augment onto 1. Without it, you cannot unlock Zehen, and this kind of mission is completely undoable because you can't unlock 1 unit already. On top of that, you must get Brock, so you must be playing Ixtal. You must also be able to get 4 Shurima, that way you're able to unlock all of these Shurimans. You also must unlock Baron Nasher, so you must be level 10 and have all the Void units fielded. And you have to make sure that you have Rift Herald on your board for at least 8 rounds. So within Talker's Trials, where there's only 20, you have to get those 2 Void in fairly quickly. On top of that, a bunch of unlock conditions as well, things like Shadow Isles, things like Asol, getting all the Targonians on the board, things like Silas, making sure that you're getting all of those Luxes, your Garens, and your Jarvans as well. Things like Galio, you gotta field all of the Demacian units, which, by the way, if you try to get 3-star Galio, then suddenly all of you get the 3-star Demacians on the board, so that becomes an issue as well. So as you can tell, their board is absolutely stacked, and once you are actually able to complete the mission, you are able to buy any 3-star unit that you want. Every unit in your shop is going to be a 3-star. So a really awesome Easter egg found out by Mindful, so shout out to them. The next thing we're going to talk about is some Chinese tech that came out very recently over on the competitive TFT subreddit, also known as Bilgewater Ryze. This is a variation of Ryze that we have not seen come up too much, at least to my knowledge. So this is definitely some incredibly new tech that has just surfaced up. The original poster claims that they are a 1.3k peak LPCN player and rank 12 NA in previous sets, and they play around this version of the board, which plays around Ryze, and the idea is you want to tempo with Alawi 3 to get to the board state. It works very similarly to the way that you play something around like Graves Reroll, where you're toggling with 3 Bilge in order to find those 3 Bilge shop odds to try and farm copies of Alawi rather than Graves, so then that way you're able to tempo with an Alawi 3 and a strong tank and get straight to 9. Of course, this is only playable with a very early Bilgewater, so ideally a TF with any sort of slams. Essentially, you want to just go straight to 9 by tempoing throughout stage 2 and 3 while sacking stage 4. The most important unlock conditions in the line itself does revolve around units like Volibear and units like Kobuko, so you want to make sure that you're prioritizing those belts throughout the early game. On level 8, the guide states that you do want to be playing around 4 Bruiser, ideally with 5 Bilgewater, but if you are super healthy in HP, then 7 Bilgewater at 4-2 to farm Serpents is okay as well. But the real kicker of this composition, what makes it so unique, is that you are looking for Black Market Explosives. It is a 7 Bilgewater item. This item is supposedly true bits on Ryze, and if if you look at the stats itself, you can tell that in this line itself, it is one of his best items. Cutthroat as well actually shows up really high up on the stats, and something that you could definitely put onto Ryze as well. Now, in terms of the other itemization that you still need on this guy, it does look like you still need things like some type of mana gen, so things like blue buff or Shojin, and then on top of that, some sort of AP, things like JG or Archangels. Now, the original poster also did mention that they did get to try it on their own Smurf account in NA, but when you actually look at the Smurf account that they actually played this on, it is a platinum account. Obviously, very, very high win rate and doing really, really well, but that doesn't really speak much in terms of the actual power of the composition. But when we scroll down to the comments, you can also tell that he also talked about for higher elo gameplay, he had a friend of his play in the 900 LP range over in CN, and based on the match history, they did seem to be playing incredibly well with really high placements, going 1-2-1-1. The friend who actually played on the account was a 971 GM CN player, so I think we can say that this composition definitely has some legs. But I do have a few takes on the composition that I think might be some helpful tips. Now, again, I haven't actually tried the comp myself, but I will try it myself and report back within a few days on how it's actually going. But based off first impressions, the first thing I want to note is that I don't think you actually want to prioritize your AP items too early. I actually think you want to prioritize your AD items and items that you want to actually put on the volley bear. The reason being is that because in order to play this composition, you want Bilge early, utilizing a TF early, meaning that you're going to unlock Graves. Graves is a great way for you to preserve your HP early while maintaining tempo, and I think Graves would be a great item holder in order to hold things that Volibear would really like, things like Sterax. As the game progresses, I think starting from stage 3 onwards, that's when you could think a little bit more about your AP items, because as you progress throughout the game, TF is not right now in the current patch a great AP item holder. But by the time you're getting to stage 4, you're unlocking units like Fizz, but you're also playing around units like Lissandra, who can all utilize AP really well, and on your level 8 roll down, if you decide to roll a little bit, you can try to itemize those in order to hold your items until you get to Ryze. But don't forget, this composition really wants to unlock Kobuko and unlock Volibear, so the belts are super important, so make sure you don't forget to prioritize those. And while the original guide did say that they wanted to use Taric instead, I do think utilizing Skarner, especially with a Gargoyle Slam early, is a great way to tempo with this line, while also ensuring that you have a strong tank that you can fill into the board. Now, in terms of the actual positioning of the composition as well, I do think that the way that the positioning that I have currently on this board is the best way to position as your current default. The reason I think this positioning is so good is that it's very similar to the positioning that we saw when Bosso Skills talked about playing around Lissandra Volibear a little while back with Ryze. The general idea for this positioning is to make sure that your strongest tank in this screenshot, being Wukong, is going to be the one that takes aggro, so then that way you're avoiding a shitter tank taking the aggro first, and then your Volibear, who ends up walking up, doesn't get targeted too quickly into the fight. By positioning something similar with this board itself, you're essentially blocking off the right side so Volibear isn't able to walk over this way, while he's still able to walk towards the left side while Tahm Kench tanks aggro first. And one last thing, because this composition works really similar to Graves reroll, and instead of Graves you're looking for a Lowy, make sure you don't forget to toggle for stats on 3 and 5. Especially after you hit your 7 Bilge item. That's basically all the tips that I have right out the gate from what I can tell based off the post itself. Again, I will have to test the line myself before I can really give any concrete advice on the line itself. But moving on to the next topic, let's talk a little bit about the Mortdog meta rundown. In case you missed it, on Monday, Mortdog came out with another morning meta report, and I highly recommend you go and watch it because there is a ton of good tidbits of information if you're trying to stay updated on the meta. But nothing too different just because it's sort of been the same patch for the past 3 weeks, so the TLDR is that emblems are a little bit worse and the piltover augments are a little bit better, but other than that, nothing too much has moved around the needle. On the topic of Mortdog and TFT as a whole, the next TFT patch is actually going to be delayed by 1 day. As a reminder, this came out on the official TFT Twitter account, but 16.2 will go live on Thursday local times, pushed back 1 day, with the patch notes releasing on Wednesday. Now, Mortdog himself did come out with a patch rundown, but you got to keep in mind, things are always changing the last second, so you got to make sure that you're looking at the official notes before you think you know everything about the patch itself. Again, the notes are going to come out later on Wednesday, so you should keep an eye out for that, but I highly recommend looking over the patch 16.2 rundown led by Mort and Truxie, who go over the entirety of the patch, and it is a massive patch. A lot of things are changing. A lot of the top performers are getting nerfed quite hard, and a lot of the underperformers are getting buffed quite a lot. Not only that, a lot of emblems are getting buffed themselves, and some item changes are going to be taking place. Again, I'm not going to cover the entirety of the patch because there's so much to cover, but I think it's good to just see the general sentiment about the patch itself if you want to get an idea as to what's going on. First off, T-Hex got absolutely gutted. This is the biggest thing of the patch. And as you can tell by this meme posted by Solus, this comp is probably completely unplayable. The biggest change that I want to talk about is the caster mana regen. It went from 3-6-12 to 2-4-5. You've essentially lost more than a blue buff worth of mana regen on T-Hex if you were to try to play this T-Hex line on the next patch by playing around a 3-star caster to feed the T-Hex. Now, to put this into perspective, this new T-Hex, if you were to feed it a 3-star caster, is going to be worse than if you were to feed it a 2-star Caitlyn on the current T-Hex. Not only that, it gets less max HP for its spell shield, it gets less spell damage, and overall, it is just completely different in terms of being a unit. As you can tell, the memes are flooding Twitter because this thing is gone. It is eviscerated. It is definitely no longer a thing. Also, Skills, who we mentioned earlier, who was a previous rank 1 North American player, but also his study group contains a bunch of world champions. He's talking about how he actually really likes the direction of the patch, but it's obviously a lot of large swings. He also talks about how rolling before 4-2 before level 8 might become a little bit more viable based off the patch itself, but I do think that's something we're gonna have to see once the patch actually hits before we can really say that's for certain. This Soap, the 2-times world champion of North America, is also talking about how the balanced thrashers will absolutely not like this patch, but he does think that the balance team did swing a bit too hard, but it will be nice to play with some of the new units. Asa has also chimed in onto the conversation and talks about how this patch is, again, very, very large. There are a lot of things going on, but he does try to reiterate the point that yes, some of the top comps being nerfed such as Diana and T-Hex to lead your carry are just completely unfun to play against, so erring on the side of nerfing these harder is technically ideal. And again, these are not Ace's points, these are the Rider's points. This is where they're coming from. Now, obviously, these are good points to be making. It does suck a little bit that the balance is going to be thrashed quite hard, but considering it's been such a stale meta for so long, I don't think this is something most players are going to be complaining about. When you think about it, we're still finding new innovations on the patch, despite the fact that the patch has been out for so long. So the general reception really does feel like, yeah, this is a lot of balance thrashing and a lot of big changes, but overall, it is going to be a net positive. Of course, the small vocal minority who is going to be really, really annoyed by this, though, is going to be the competitive players. Because those who are trying to practice and prep for the next cup are going to have roughly about less than 24 hours in order to try to actually prepare for the patch to play in the turn. Now, as Cambuli mentions, who is a tier 1 pro player, there is no PvE practice because Rider is on break, and he scheduled a tournament right after said break. I don't know about them ignoring all the player complaints and questions. I think that's a bit of a hyperbole. I think for the most part, especially someone like Mort, very receptive and responsive to a lot of questions, so I don't think this is really an issue, but maybe he's talking about like the official channels. I'm not entirely sure, but he is right that there's a huge patch that will probably completely change the game. It's going to be coming up. So we may not see the best performers, but we'll definitely see the best preppers when it comes to the next cup, which again is going to happen on January 9th. Now, I think on a bit more of a funnier / positive note, Mel recently posted a selfie on Twitter, who, in case you don't know, she does the UX for TFT Academy with the caption Mel Unlocked, which is quirky. It's funny. It's whatever. This El Hermano guy comments on this tweet, lol, that's funny. I just got done playing game where I unlocked Mel. Sometimes life throws funny coincidences at us. Haha, lol. Now, if you don't know who this El Hermano guy is, his entire personality is commenting, looking for a TFT girlfriend, parentheses, serious, on every single TFT post. And this guy is so well known in the community for doing this because he's been doing it for so long that this motherfucker has merch. Looking for TFT girlfriend, parentheses, serious, merch with Mortimer in the photo. This was taken at the Paris Open, which is just so fucking hilarious, but I just thought it had to be mentioned. And what I thought was extra funny about this was the absolute assist given by none other than 149 CMTFT, talking about how he was abandoned by his family when he turned 12, said he should go find a job, make his own living, and he had felt lost, helpless, falling deeper and deeper into debt, eventually became homeless, but then one day scavenging outside a bakery for leftover food out of nowhere at El Hermano 1337 came over and asked him whenever he needed help, and even offered his Bugatti to sleep in, and also gave him a Labrador and that he rescued from a dog shelter. Absolute W assist. Hopefully maybe Mel saw this comment. I don't know. Praying for my boy El Hermano, though. I had to throw this out there because I just thought it was fucking hilarious. But that's basically all I got for today. Thank you guys so much for watching today's episode. If you have any other news pieces or any other interesting tidbits you want me to cover, make sure to leave them in the comment section below and I'll make sure to check them out. Stay happy, stay healthy, and most importantly, happy climbing.